Before we start, does anybody have any general questions that they'd like to talk about with educational type of data centers before we get into the nuts and bolts? Some interesting concepts that have recently happened where one of the projects we worked with a university out on the West Coast that had a medical center. And they were doing, they do transplant surgery in their medical center. And they did have an event with their data center. That wasn't good. That wasn't good for the educational people. They were getting a little bit crazy. But it was very interesting. And I've also been very fascinated with the e-learning. How many of you folks are involved with the e-learning? Interesting how it evolves, right? I remember way back to Phoenix School when it started and everybody thought that was crazy. And now it really is. Right? I mean, it's there. You know, there was a, it was interesting. There was a study, we worked with Accenture and Deloitte, some of the big consulting firms. And when it came to education, they had an interesting perspective of the 5-year future look at many of their universities. Who would guess what they were potentially forecasting? Anybody have a guess? Jump in. Guess what? What do you? And now these are the big smart people, right?
I don't know. The books, or that e-learning was going to replace the universities. Yeah.
Basically, e-learning was going to become very significant. And by the way, the bricks and mortar in jeopardy, right? Where you're being housed, and the financial repercussions to universities that don't adapt to this were going to be significant. Yes?
You might want to postpone the restart.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Very good. How's that? Now we're going? But it was interesting because they were saying that. It's like the transformation. So I'm just curious, how do you deal with security on who's on the other end of your device? Taking the course, taking the exams?
Well, there are several ways. I mean, some courses do it by requiring students to come into a testing center for one of the exams.
Okay.
Some courses do it by requiring people to submit drafts of the papers.
Right.
That the students need to, because that makes it much harder to cheat. Some use webcams to actually look at the students.
Interesting.
Taking the exams. Some have got other methods.
Yes.
Some do hire a company to do a challenging question that ask financial questions. For example, suddenly pops up a question says, did you live in the town of Manchester in the year 1994?
Interesting. You know, I saw a pilot in a beta test. What they're doing is going to be having your fingerprints being able to run through. That's a little bit, that's another stage. But anyhow, are we 10:10 Eastern Standard Time right now?
Yep.
True? All right. Close enough? Good enough. All right, so we're going to talk about the Yankees today and how, no, we're not, how they're going to destroy, how they're going to take care of Boston. That's really what you came here for. So anyhow, we're going to talk about the data center hybrid solution today. And we'll go through it. Feel free during the course of this if you have any questions. Let's talk about higher ed for data centers and what we're seeing. And what we're trying to impart today is, my name is Mark Ivanko. I'm principal engineer at Brunspack. So we do data centers. We consult, design, engineer, and build commission data centers. So universities, we've worked with some of you folks, a lot of you folks around the country. It's kind of interesting seeing what is the data center solution. So we're going to talk about this today, and the presentation provides a summary of the options and considerations. If you're in a university, they want to understand, what are my options? How do I meet my present and future requirements? Should I retrofit my existing complex? Should I expand my existing facility? Consolidate multiple data center projects? Relocating a data center? What's this mean to space, power, cooling, OpEx versus CapEx? And then there's your considerations right there. How does co-location play into my university data center or college or high school or whatever you're doing? Cloud, containerized system. What's the repercussions to my network? Hey, by the way, if my data goes out on my students, Who's liable for that? Right? I wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed in undergraduate school or graduate school. If they get my data and publish that, I'm not too happy. What's going to happen? So also disaster recovery. Does it make a difference if you go up or not? I understand registration is a critical time, but if you have a medical center in some of these universities, that even becomes more critical. The hardware, software, personnel, design build costs, overall schedules, SLAs, and CapEx versus OpEx. So we're going to talk about this today, about my return on investment. If I'm running this university, I want to see what my return on investment is. So today we're going to talk, this is going to be a 7-hour seminar. No, it's not. And we're going to turn the heat up and torture you. We're going to talk about calculus and physics, everything. Anyhow, no. We're going to talk about 2014. What's the challenge that we're seeing today? The elements of a hybrid solution. By the way, that's what we're finding. Basically, it's a hybrid data center solution today. Total cost of ownership, what does that mean? Concerns of all data center solutions. And then we're going to talk about highlights of data center, co-location, container, and cloud considerations. What should I do? Where should I go? What are people thinking about? And then we're going to talk about concepts of a modular, scalable data center. And then if you have any questions, we don't have the answers. So we'll just go from there. 2014, let's talk about this. So the major mission that's been in, and this is not only in the educational community, but this is in private enterprise, is to decrease CapEx costs, right? I'd rather go to OpEx versus CapEx. CapEx meaning I don't want to fund the $10 million data center per se. Can I do something for $200,000 a month? Not bad. I mean, that's really what the focus is. So what you want to do is people are leveraging the available technologies. Cloud. Can I put everything in the cloud? Why should I have a data center? Why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I go to co-location facility and not have my own facility? We're going to get into some details about this. Containers. Can I just drop a container in the back of my building for high-performance computing arrays for research and be done with it? Consideration. What about physically owned sites? What should I do with that? And how does disaster recovery play into this? Does it make a difference if all your data goes away now? Well, now it's even more so important, right? When you see all these presentations by university professors, it's incredible that now the demand that's coming up there. Increasing the data telecommunication performance uptime, right? You can't wait 3 hours to download your presentation. That doesn't work. So, and now project data security. I'd have to say this is a common denominator, not in only in university settings, all settings, private enterprise. What if my data goes away? What if Target took 60 million people's credit cards information and it's out there? What did Senator Menendez now bring down to the House and Senate, this is now federal, that they're going to be able to sue the companies now? That's the legislation that's in motion. Because you know, I don't know if any of you people, anybody affected by Target with their data out there? And basically it was, good luck, you have to figure out what you're doing. Right, or they give you a year of somebody that would protect it. But the thing is, if you're going to go through all this torture, they're now making legislation. If that data goes out, we're going to fine you. So XC, both internal and external SLA agreements. It's kind of interesting. Some universities working together are combining. And they're having operating agreements as far as uptime is concerned. Just-in-time data processing with corresponding data center facility expansion. You don't want to build a 10-year projected data center. That doesn't work too well. You want to have a modular, scalable solution. Data center solutions that provision for future technology solutions. By the way, in some of the universities we've been working with, high-performance computing arrays have been unbelievable. We've done high-performance clusters from some of the research computing people, have exceeded 50 to 60 kW per rack, which is pretty significant. Some have gotten up to 80 kW per rack. Now, it's kind of interesting, some of the research that they're doing, some of them have very high availability requirements, some don't. They can do their research, and if it goes away, that's okay. This is kind of interesting. Complete comprehensive disaster recovery, business continuity planning, and execution. These are all consideration in 2014. If you lose your data center or lose your network, what happens? Can you still be in business? Is the president going to be fired up or not? Can the whole university, yeah, fired, that'd be one thing. Can the university, can the students operate? Boy, wouldn't they love to blame IT for giving them a couple vacation days, right? Think about that. As a matter of fact, you might have some of that working in there. Anyhow, I don't want to go into it. At all costs, right? Protect the enterprise computing operation and energy efficiency. I got to say this. Energy efficiency is really highlight with universities, academic institutions. They want to be very green sensitive. Just as a highlight, in the state of Washington, we deployed a heat wheel technology to cool the data center for Dell. This is now public. So in essence, 93% of the year, they don't pay for mechanical cooling. They just use the outside ambient temperature to cool their data center. So this is a graphical part. Let's talk about the elements. What is this hybrid thing? I thought I'd do all my stuff in a computer room. Not necessarily anymore, a data center. You take a look at these things, there it is. Facility infrastructure, yeah, that's one part. I have my raised floor, maybe not, maybe whatever. But other things that impact the data center solution, what are you doing with energy efficiency? If you're not taking advantage of ASHRAE 9.9 and taking 80-degree inlet temperature air to your racks, you're not doing justice for your trustees and your stockholders. You should bring that temperature up right off the bat because, as ASHRAE 9.9 says, Hewlett-Packard, IBM, which we're partners of, Dell, accept those operating temperatures. You should be doing that. Computer hardware. What are my platforms that I'm running? How does cloud impact? Can I take some of my non-critical applications and send it to the cloud? The answer is yes. Maybe, and is it cost effective? Why wouldn't I do that? If I'm running a popcorn machine and I'm sending data back to say when I'm cooking my popcorn, who cares if somebody permanently borrows, steals the data? Doesn't make a difference. If I'm sending my medical records, though, to the cloud and somebody takes that, that's a whole different ballgame. Disaster recovery, this comes into play. Is it synchronous data that you're bringing back and forth? Is it non? Does it make a difference? Can you take a 24-hour outage? Co-location, does that play in? Yeah. Guess what? If I have some processing applications coming up that have a short-term window, 2-year window, 3-year window, why would I build my own infrastructure, data center facility, when I know I can lease it, it's non-critical data, and get rid of it in 2 or 3 years? That's not a bad option. That's where it really comes into play. Migration, relocation is consideration, your software applications, modular. By the way, patient care, some of the hospitals, very critical. Patient care applications that run through the data center, pharmacy. By the way, they're in a university academic environment as well. You don't want that data borrowed, right? Permanently borrowing that data is not good. These are not good things. Modularity, scalability, I have to say that's the biggest thing. Make sure that you have whatever it is, if it's a hybrid solution, it can scale. Whether you bring in new applications or you don't. Communications, network, number 10, big element. Service level agreements, personnel, 12, where are you putting your people? Does it make a difference where you put your people? Are you going to have managed services out in the cloud? You don't need any people? What are you doing? And then CapEx versus lease. What's my OpEx cost? Should I really spend $10 million? And by the way, after you're all done and containers being an option, this is the vision that we've presented to trustees at universities. They want to understand, what were my options? Why are you recommending, after this all came down, this hybrid solution that part went to cloud, part went to colo, part went to container, and part stayed home? Why? And it was basically an interview with the IT folks. So this is kind of fascinating. And as I indicated, when we combine with Accenture and Deloitte, they look at these total, by the way, that's total cost of ownership. So how do I optimize the contribution from each of the elements? That's what you got to do, optimize them. Starts with, oh, let me get rid of that.
That was in the cloud.
Yeah, that was in the cloud. Exactly. Somebody's borrowing my data right off the bat. Let's see. Well, there we go. Starts with information technology. You need to talk to the IT folks, right? How does this work? What's your vision? The criticality of uptime now in the future. I can tell you this. If your uptime really relevant and your data, you don't care about your data security, get rid of it. I wouldn't house anything in my facility. I'd go right to the cloud. I wouldn't even waste my time. Go to the cloud, go to Amazon services, right? Cheap, cheap. Why hybrid in 2014 behind? What has changed? By the way, well, the criticality of uptime now in the future is kind of amazing. It's really getting big. And the hybrid solution has come about because people are trying to maximize the return on investment. When you look at those 13 elements there, you want to maximize what that means to me, total cost of ownership. Very few people do the total cost of ownership type of program. So the impacts of, oh, it wants to torture me, huh? Impacts of of you know, hardware as a service. Everybody's seen this. Why would I go and buy all this stuff if I don't need to? What? Well, now I'm jammed up. Anyhow, let's see what happened, because as we went here, let me see, I'll cancel this. Let me see, take that out. Yeah, don't show me this again. Click that. All right, let's see if we got it. No, we're hung up. No, let's see. Let's go. All right, the critical nature of evaluating application candidates. By the way, depends on your applications. It will tell you whether you can go to the cloud or not. If you have some very high security HIPAA type of regulated information and or student information, I don't think you're going off site. If that information is ever token, that's where you're seeing the legalities coming out. The legal beagles are getting very involved in this since Target. That's cascading all over. They're saying, wait a minute, you're just not going to say too bad. There's going to be issues with this. One size fits all. We don't believe the data center solution one size fits all. What's the data center comprehensive efficiency metric for the 13-element solution? There is none. If somebody says, give me the most efficient data center modules, there is none for that. Wow, we are having some issues. What happened? But anyhow.
Close the window without telling it not to do the update.
Is that what it was? Yeah. Jesus Christ. Well, that's we'll have to, let's see, let's bring it back up. All right, sorry about that. But in the meantime, let me bring it back up. Can you imagine if I was really transmitting some very sensitive data? It would have been unbelievable. All right, we'll bring it back up. But when I'm talking about some universities, the registration time seems to be one of the most critical applications. It used to be. Now it's because of all the lessons being put on every day, every night, and things of that nature. It's continuous. The question there is going to be, when's going to be your non-critical time that you can actually take data centers down? Does any college, how many people here are from colleges? Anybody have a hospital with them? Yeah, medical center. And is that a separate data processing center, or is that part of the university's data center?
Part of the university. It's got some local computing.
It does, okay. So that's interesting. So you could see some of the real critical, because some of the patient care applications and pharmacy that runs through there, the uptime is really kind of significant. Well, we're getting there. As I indicated, there was a one out there in the West Coast where they did do transplants, and the data center went down during the course of transplant, during a transplant operation. That's still illegal. This is 5 years later. That's still illegal about the repercussions of that. Let's see. All right, let's go. Sorry for the technical errors. All right. All right, we're back up and running now. We should be. All right, let's go up. Right. And by the way, research computing, what we're finding, is very significant. Research grants. Research grants and getting dollars and cents associated with allocation. There was one university, we're under non-disclosure, a $10 million grant they just received for high-performance computing processing. It was part of just, and they needed the center, the data center itself, to go and be able to deliver that. So they funded it. The data center itself cost about $4 million to go and develop of the $10 million grant. All right, sorry about that. Let's see if we can get this going here. But anyhow, and we saw another one just recent, a grant from NASA actually came to a university, $36 million from a university to go and support the processing. Again, they had to have the high performance computing. Well, Stand by. Sorry about this. And this gets, we're done at 10:30, right? So this is going to be. Where is it? All right. Well, now I'm really hung up. Hold on. We don't have anybody who's an expert in these, because I'm hung up for some reason, whichever reason. Yeah, let me see. I don't know. I'm heading it, but it's not reacting to it. Well, let me go through. If we have anybody who thinks they can troubleshoot this. Let me see something here. No, it's I'm hung up. I'm hung up on the computer system itself. So anyhow, let me just continue to go through the data center. I have the physical part of this, unfortunately. Anybody have so let's talk about this. We just talked about the CapEx versus OpEx. Total cost of ownership is the part 3 section. So I want to just emphasize this. This is all about the co-location cloud. Total cost of ownership of all those 13 elements. In essence, that's what I'm going to net out to you. All those elements, what's your co-location cost, what's your cloud cost, what's your network cost, what's your hardware cost, your software, your disaster recovery, all the way through CapEx versus OpEx. That's in essence what your trustees are looking to go and see. So the key part is starting with information technology. How does information technology go and with your IT people? Your CIO should be the ones that you're talking to. In the case of medical centers, by the way, you have all your doctors that have to get involved. Surgery, what are their applications coming in down the line? I'll continue to try to, no. OpEx versus CapEx. So the question comes down to, should I renovate, should I expand, or should I build new? Should I go to cloud? So I'm saying university trustees, what we presented, they want to see a report like this. By the way, here's in essence what trustees have wanted to see. What's your day 1 CapEx cost? What's your day 2 CapEx cost? What's your day 1 OpEx cost? What's your day 2 OpEx cost? They want to see that in graphic form. By the way, should I deploy outside ambient temperatures to go and cool my data center? You absolutely should. Why wouldn't I take advantage of the air last evening, say for instance? Why am I running my mechanical plant to go and cool my data center? You could save a lot of money, a lot of money. As I indicated, 93% of the time up there in Quincy, Washington, they're using outside air to cool. By the way, computational fluid dynamics also plays a very large part into this. Concerns of all data center solutions, let me just give you a highlight of this, and I want to get to the net of this. CapEx versus OpEx. I can tell you the number one thing is, universities, all things being equal, would rather go to an OpEx cost. I'd rather spend $100,000 a month than tell me I have to spend $15 million capital dollars. Tell me what that's going to look like. How are you protecting my data, by the way, if you do that? And I can tell you something that co-location people are familiar with using the outside. There's a new model that's being developed where people are developing their internal co-location facility themselves. So in essence, instead of leasing a facility, they're building it and they're financing it themselves and basically paying an OpEx cost. So instead of spending $10 million of capital dollars, they will spend $100,000 a month internally. They're getting finance companies that will actually go and host their own co-location facilities. By the way, third-party providers, I want to emphasize this. Network security is one of the most important things that you're going to go and see, ever. And it's going to be more dominant. If my information goes out from a medical standpoint, or my information goes out as a student, my student records, the legalities of this have really souped up. We've seen this. The legal beagles are getting all over this. I'm going to caution you with that. If you come into an agreement with a third-party provider, colo, cloud, what you want to do is have a statute there of legal liability associated with this. Not, by the way, I get 1 month free rent. We had a customer, their downtime was worth about, every event when they went outside was worth about $15 million an event. They went to the colo, they were gonna sign a portion of the contract, they said, just guarantee me that you'll pay my $15 million if I went down. They said, that's not part of this deal. We'll give you 1 month's free rent, which was $50,000. He said, there's no way we're gonna sign that, because if it does go down, the repercussions were tremendous. Let me just talk about the final part of it. Let me give you pluses and minuses of data centers and co-location at a high level. Now, you have to excuse me for my issues that I had here. The pluses of a data center facility: complete ownership of hardware, self-provision security, self-provision operations, control of overall long-term 13 elements, and control of change management, direct cost for change management, self-reliability. What's the minus of owning my own data center? Large CapEx costs, non-leverage critical applications, reliant on employee operations. By the way, who's the #1 security concern? It's the people inside of IT, not people outside. They're the people that you have to worry about. Large employee cost and commitment and potential provision. Let's talk about co-location. What's the benefit of co-location? Defrays capital cost. Short schedule for availability. Manage your own services. Others maintain the facility. That's a good benefit. What's the disadvantage? By the way, network costs. If you go outside, you better understand what your network connectivity cost is back and forth, total cost of ownership. Shared facility with multiple tenants. What happens if I'm next to you and I decide to borrow your data, permanently borrow your data? Who's liable? Who's paying for that? So that's a concern. Legal contract terms and conditions. By the way, the legal beagles are going crazy since Target. And this is also in university settings. If I bring my data out, I want somebody liable for that. That wasn't in the co-location cost model. That's not in the cloud cost model. If you look at those contracts, they are not paying damages. They say this is best efforts. By the way, not on company-owned property, and you have control by others. How about containers? What's the advantages of that? Prepackaged, pre-wired, short-term delivery, trailer modular blocks, minimize capital expense, and modular. By the way, what's the minus? Watch out. You cannot just drop these shelters without going to planning boards and zoning boards in many areas, right? It's a shelter. You just can't. It's like putting a, you know how you put the big garage in your backyard and you didn't tell your neighbor and you thought you got away with it? No. That don't work. You just can't drop it. You have to go to planning boards, zoning boards, and by the way, some will not accept modular facilities. Where are they the containers, where are they very advantageous? Government facilities. You don't need any permits. You can do whatever you want to do that on there. Planning board, zoning board, tractor trailer concept, and data center long-term workflow. If you've ever worked in a container, anybody have seen them, worked in them? You understand, right? It's not for people like myself necessarily, not that I'm not the biggest guy. Anyhow, it gets a little tight with high performance computing array racks, so you just got to watch out. Finally, cloud computing. Let's talk about the pluses. The pluses are fast delivery. You can spin up applications in what? I think Amazon said 15 minutes on some of them, right? So that's a benefit. Decreased capital cost, instantaneous increase of bandwidth, decreased electrical utility costs, access to the latest refresh of technology, emerging technology, and there's many vendors. What's the minus of cloud? Network security. Who's dealing with this? This is like the 100-pound gorilla or 5,000-pound gorilla in the room. Who's going to deal with that legally? I saw 60 Minutes, by the way, made a reference that it said that the CIA went into the Amazon cloud. What they failed to tell you, right? And you see, right in the Amazon, you see that they're a great company. But what they failed to tell you was that was not any of their critical applications. I think it was ordering food and beverages for one of their facilities. That's what they put into the cloud. Not the confidential data of where their spies are and who's doing what, because if that was ever taken. The control of operation is a minus. Legal contract terms and conditions, by the way, get your legal beagles there. Who's liable when this thing goes down? We have a customer right now that just figured out, by the way, one of the cloud providers declared bankruptcy. They said, by the way, you have 30 days to get all your systems and software out. They have 50,000 square feet, 50,000 square feet of data processing operation. They've been given a 30-day mantra. Now, you folks understand, what do you think the probability that you're getting out of Dodge in 30 days? Not too good. What do you think the threat is to this company right now? Massive. But the provider went bankrupt. So that's why what you have to watch then is any of these providers have to be as financially stable as yourself. And by the way, the fees and costs associated with it changes. And if you change anything in the cloud, what happens? Finally, as a conclusion part of the modular scalable data center, I will tell you this. That's what you want to do, is be able to scale it. You don't want to build it on a 5-year IT vision. You want to be able to deploy high-performance computing as it comes in. When research gets a grant for another 100 racks at 50 kW, you want to be able to add another UPS module, another generator module, and the chilled water circuit required. By the way, computational fluid dynamics is very critical. If you haven't run CFD models, do that. It will tell you when you need chilled water versus airside cooling. So in conclusion, I won't tie you up anymore. Modular, scalable, flexible solution is what you're going to want to go through. If anybody wants a copy of the real presentation, by the way, I can actually email that. Just come up, give me your card, I'll give that to you. But with that, I want to just wrap up and say thank you for the time. It gives you an overview. I'll give you questions. Yes?
Yeah, so I'm in a similar business to yours, so
Yeah.
that everyone knows. And it's interesting when we go and meet with CIOs, CFOs, and boards of trustees, the first question we get asked is, why should we, the colleges and universities, be in the data center business? The second question is
Great.
always, what makes us think we can do it better than colo or cloud providers?
Yeah,
And
great
maybe
question.
that's a little unique in this local area because we have about 16 tier 3 data centers surrounding us, but even when we do work in Vermont and other places, same questions come up, and the answer, we can't give them an answer that says your staff is any better than the myriad of experts that are doing this somewhere else. So the risk is, are you hearing the same thing?
Absolutely excellent. And by the way, this is where it comes into total cost of ownership. How much does it cost me to process my data, personnel, hardware, software, network, support, DR, versus how much is it going out to the cloud? You're absolutely, but you have to address that. Those questions must be addressed. You can't just say, I just did it. And by the way, when you look to the cloud and the hybrid solution, it is total cost of ownership. Very good question. Yes?
Yeah, so if we look at sort of cloud and logical partitioning and dynamic partitioning, it's decades-old technology.
Right, right.
And it's a little fuzzy, cloud versus outsourcing, right?
Yep.
Do you see risk, and of course you guys are kind of in this business, do you see risk in cloud inflation? Because some players, and you talked about a bankruptcy, don't seem to know how to price.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you can go to IBM and say you want sort of, let's say, a dynamic service. I don't know if there's any
Yes.
itty bitty machine company here, but so if you did kind of a dynamic, you try to get something from that, and of course you go through software, or well, the software licenses don't exactly partition nicely, right?
Absolutely.
You get a proposal that still looks like an outsourcing proposal, even from their cloud folks. And then you go, Amazon, Azure, any of these characters, right? And then a lot of new ones. And it's like the newbies are kind of what to charge. And so Amazon's talking about a lot of big CapEx now.
Oh,
You read their back end,
Yep.
read their annual report. And they're starting to create, well, what's this really cost? So is there a possibility that we have risk inflation? I'm not saying I think cloud can be a great solution. It's just that you have risk in inflation in cloud.
You know what? That's a great point. Again, forgive me. I would like to send you a presentation. I can get this permitted because we have a client out in California who's a very sharp guy who did an AFCOM. He worked AFCOM type thing. He did an analysis. He went out with an RFP to stop the changes, for lack of better words.
Right.
Once you get what an analysis! Because he actually composed. He's a CIO. He composed this RFP to stop exactly that. Can I tell you something? When he went out with this job, and it's public, I can get a release from him. When he went out with this RFP, what do you think the co-location folks' initial response was in filling out this matrix? It wasn't happy birthday, I can tell you that. They weren't the words they used. They did not want to fill this in because it had everything about changes, adds, moves, because everything's going to change. I don't care what you have. What you're going in with day one is not going to be 2 years or 3 years. But then when you get into the fine print, well, here's a change order, here's a change order, here's a change order. This guy actually did an incredible analysis. You are absolutely right. Because it's almost like, and you are absolutely outsourcing contract. Get you in the door, your goose is cooked. Where are you going? What are you going to do? You're going to sign up and say, oh my God, ooh, ah. But this guy actually, CIO, actually did the due diligence to stop it. Can I tell you something? When he did that analysis, he had part of his data center in the co-location, approximately 5,000 square feet, 3 years ago. He then did his RFP document, which everybody, he's not a popular person in Southern California. Do you know the cost for his next 3 years went down 50%? Went down 50% from what he was paying? 50% of his contract value. He looks like a rock star to his board. But because he did the due diligence, where people, you're dead on with that, you know, because if you just go out there and you don't have all the T's and C's, plus he built in legal liability of data, legal liability of downtime. And by the way, I was presenting at another conference, and I said, you know, this could be really serious. You could lose millions out. One of the gentlemen came up to me after the meeting. He said, you know, Mark, I don't want to raise my hand because I'm in a publicly traded company, big, Fortune 10. He goes, that's exactly what happened to us. Our data got lifted because I was next to him. I'm picking on you. I was next to him. He borrowed my data. By the way, they lost $37 million. $37 million they could actually calculate. And when they went back to their contract T's and C's, 1 month free rent. Sorry, and 2 bubblegum balls and a lollipop. Any other questions?
It's how you do the contract, right?
Oh.
It's the key, and it's, we used to, right, you guys used to, sure, did contracts in Polo that said, what's going to happen when I grow, right? Today, think about what's going to happen when I shrink.
Oh, yeah.
And when I trade real estate
Yep.
for cloud. What's the calculation? How does it work? Because you don't want to be stuck with space.
By the way, the one, and I got to watch myself with Fortune, a big company was out there, when he said he wanted to cover his downtime, right, associated with it, it was not $40 per square foot per month. They said if you want a downtime coverage, it is $490 per square foot per month. Not 40, 490. He says, not available. I'll do it myself. Because then the economies, right, turn all the way back. So you,
Cloud should be able to go to zero, right? I mean, that's the magic of VMware. Right?
well, but so you can see. But I think this is an exciting time. It's an exciting time, but when, in a university setting, and now people are getting very sensitive. If my data goes out that shows that I'm not a Rhodes Scholar, and I'm not, needless to say, I'm not. I always say I'm not from Harvard, even though we consult with Harvard. But if mine goes out that says I'm not a Rhodes Scholar, I'm fired up. If I see that on ABC News, now everybody knows I'm not a Rhodes Scholar. I mean, I know it wasn't apparent to begin with, but I'm pretty upset. But the thing is, seriously, now it's not like, hey, too bad you have a bad hair day, you know, take care of your own credit problem. It's now, you could significantly hurt somebody. Not only your credit rating and then try to repair and do all this other, but you can really affect people's applications that come in online, people's data, decisions on why people weren't admitted or not. You know, so any other questions, comments? Again, if you want the presentation here or if you want the California co-location thing, I can get a release from him. He's a great guy. His name is John Parker. He's really sharp. But just to your point, because guess what? The first 3 years, he got beat up in that co-location contract. Add this, change that. Another good point. What if my footprint shrinks? How?
Cloud, go to zero, right? I mean, it's totally variable cost. That's the way PowerPoints all say that.
Well, again, not being from Harvard, I don't want to pick on the Harvard because they said, don't say that, you're not from Harvard. I'm not from Harvard, but anyhow, the bottom line is there's never something for nothing. But now this whole thing, we've suffered the most serious economic time since the 30s. Therefore, what does everybody want to do? Conserve cash. Conserve cash. I'd rather spend an operating cost than do a capital cost. Yes?
Well, and when I look at a capital cost, the type of capital cost matters to me a lot. If I build a building on my campus, I'm going to get at least 30 years of use out of it. I'm going to have to repair some windows and do some other stuff. But my upkeep and my refresh cost is relatively speaking low for the investment. With all this IT stuff, I'm replacing it all, you know, if I'm lucky every 6 years, frequently every 2 to 3 years. So my capital cost I'm not getting a lot of return on it. So a rent cost is, you know, you got to factor in how frequently you have to refresh your capital versus the rent cost. And in this area, that really pushes you toward the lease. It's not just conserving cash.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree with you. But take those 13 elements. If you consider those 13 elements and truly consider the cost, I don't care whether it's CapEx, OpEx, or what, you know, just, if you truly consider the cost and you go to your trustees with that, that's powerful. I haven't seen many people doing that. They've either focused on colo or not. We had a customer in New York, big data processing, 20,000 square foot data processing center, said, the board came down and said, listen, before we build this new data center, I forget what the numbers were, I'm going to say maybe $40, $50 million, we want to look at a complete cloud solution. Reasonable, but they said, we want to look at it. Okay, guess what? Took that to the cloud. This was high performance computing, and guess what? Tremendous network connectivity all the time. All the time. Do you know that apples to apples, the cloud solution was 5.2 times the cost higher than building their own? Because the network connectivity costs were tremendous. This wasn't just take the data and I'll visit you once a month or once a year. So to your point, look at that total cost of ownership. That's what your trustees are saying. And by the way, your trustees are, that was a good point. Why are we in the data processing business itself? You have to explain this. Can't somebody do it cheaper? Look at that. And to me, that's a fair assessment. You should be able to stand on your own feet about what's going on. The issues of data security is going to be dominating. Again, I'm proud to say I did engineering, MBA, never got out of law school. I didn't like them, they didn't like me. But I can tell you right now, the legal beagles are all over this now. Because if Menendez is successful in the U.S. House and Senate, where they're going to be able to sue companies and universities, by the way, for data corruption, that's going to be a game changer. It's going to say, hey, wait a second, how am I going to protect myself? Other questions? We can make this 17 hours. Yes?
Well, I'm just curious. You talked about the California guy that becomes a rock star to his board because of his RFP, but you also said he got the legal protections in there. I can't imagine a reputable, solvent data provider that's willing to give you those legal protections, because I did get through law school, and I wouldn't let my clients sign that because the liability is too high and the risk of it happening is too high.
Well, you know what? That's a good point, but you made a good point, because I think, I didn't know the details, that was somebody like a startup venture capitalist type of guy that wanted clients, and he would sign up for anything. But see, so now you can start.
But then I'm worried about a whole host of other things with that company, and an indemnity is only as good as the financial backing of the indemnitor.
Guess what? We have a Fortune 15 company that put some of their critical production facility in a cloud service. They looked at the financials of that company before they made a move. That company better be as strong. Other questions, comments? I don't want to torture you folks. Thank you for your time. If you want this presentation in the California, thank you. And I like not being able to give my presentation. That's a good thing too.